Okay, so we spent some time analyzing the two excerpts from A Farewell to Arms and the writing prompt with asking us what the most central theme or message about life is in both of these passages. It also wants us to explain how Hemingway develops the theme through story elements like setting, character, plot, and conflict. So what do we think?
Right off the bat, I see the theme that stands out the most in both excerpts is the futility of war and how it affects individuals. In both, we see characters grappling with the chaos and destruction around them. There's this sense that no matter what they do, they can't escape the violence and pain of the world, and that really shapes the way they view love, life, and even themselves.
I totally agree. I think that's the message Hemingway is trying to communicate. Life can feel meaningless in a world that's constantly being torn apart by war. There's no real escape from it, and yet people still try to find meaning, even if it's just in their relationships or small moments of peace. It's kind of tragic, right?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's like no matter how much Frederick tries to love Catherine or find some sense of purpose, the war is always looming over them. Even in their most intimate moments, they're reminded of how fragile the world is. But I also think the way Hemingway uses setting really highlights that theme. I mean, taking the setting of the war in these excerpts is grim and chaotic, which shows how life is constantly at risk. The war itself is like all-consuming force that shapes everything the characters do.
Exactly. Speaking of character, let's think about Frederick. In both excerpts, he seems detached from everything. He's not necessarily a hero or a villain, he's just a guy trying to get to the war. But what's interesting is how the detachment starts to shift as the story progresses. You can see how the war slowly wears him down and changes his perspective on life. He's not just fighting in the war, he's fighting to survive, to hold on to something human, like his love for Catherine.
Yeah, Frederick is so disillusioned by the war, and it's not just him. It's the way the war changes everyone. Take Catherine, for example. In the second excerpt, when she's trying to talk about losing people, she reveals how deeply the war has scarred her emotionally. She's almost numb to the idea of death, and that's heartbreaking. Her entire relationship with Frederick is based on the idea that tomorrow might never come. So that pressure of war is always there, even when they're trying to escape into their love.
That's so true, and I think the plot and conflict really drive this theme forward too. In both excerpts, we see how the war is constantly forcing Frederick and Catherine into situations where they're just trying to survive. They're not fighting for glory or national pride, they're fighting because they have no other choice. That conflict between their desire for love and the harsh realities of war is what really makes the story so compelling. In fact, it is their quieter moments that we see how the war has affected them the most. Like when they talk about their fears or fleeting nature of happiness.
Right. That's where Hemingway's writing really shows and shines. He doesn't need to explicitly tell us that the war is destroying these people. He shows it through their actions, their conversations, even their silences. Like when Frederick talks about how everything he feels in vain. It's a simple line, but it's so much about how he's starting to view the world. That Hemingway's minimalism at work making us feel the way of what's happening without spilling it out.
And I think it's also important to mention how the setting contrasts with their moments of love. It's like they're trying to hold on to these small islands of peace in the middle of this chaotic, violent environment. Take the scene where Frederick and Catherine are together. There's this brief moment of happiness, but we know it's all going to be fleeting because the war is still there. Hemingway uses the setting almost like a character itself, always present, always affecting the characters, but never truly leaving them.
Exactly, this ending is a constant reminder of how powerless the characters are. The war doesn't give them the luxury of peace or certainty. They can have love, but they can't fully live in a way that's free from the violence and the fear of war. It's like the war is the backdrop to their love story, but it also defines their love.
Definitely, and that's what makes the theme so central. The war is a catalyst for everything in the novel. It shapes their love, it shapes their actions, and it shapes their decisions. It forces them to confront the futility of trying to find peace in a world at war.
Yeah, it's a theme that runs through every part of the story. The war shows us how fragile human life is, and how even when everything seems out of control, people still try to find love and meaning. But in the end, the war takes all of that away. It's tough, heartbreaking truth, but it's the truth Hemingway wants us to understand.